Legend CA brings back Mega Evolutions. It's certainly a reason to celebrate, and one that has all the community excited, wondering what new forms might be in store for us in the future. But while I was in my hideout pondering the matter, I had a dark revelation. The return of Mega Evolution is hiding a big danger that no one is considering. But in its nature, it also hides a big opportunity. The second coming of Mega Evolutions, a power born from the energy of the ultimate weapon, can be a double-edged sword that condemns and marks the Pokemon that receive it forever, but also the key to a bright future. Now, what fairy-type Chikorita leaves have I been consuming to suddenly come out with all this? Let me explain it. Here we have Beedrill, a Pokemon that I always use as an example of how this mechanics should be executed. Its unflattering build, stats and types make it a Pokemon that never was able to do all that much in battle, which it's especially painful considering that it was an iconic and pioneer species in its role of regional bug, one that taught the player a lot, and maybe that's why in Auras it was blessed with my favorite Megaform, one that not only reinterprets its design in a very natural and clever way, but also enhanced its abilities perfectly to make it the beast that shined competitively, as it always deserved. On the other end of the scale, we have Primeape, another somewhat iconic Pokemon that was never able to stand out much and was always overshadowed by other species of its type, that remained so until the release of Paldea, which masterfully picked up the entries in the first generation Pokédex that explain how the rage and constant adrenaline spikes that this Pokemon experience can lead to death. And so, Annihilape was born, picking up the biology that was established from the very first moment for the species and reinterpreting it in a new evolution that makes it a monster that rises from oblivion. Both cases may seem similar, but there's a fundamental difference between the two, which I'm sure you can see. With this last generation, Annihilape became just another species in the Pokédex, which as long as Mankey exists, will be accessible, and so it has really rescued and given a new light to the big monkey line. While Mega Beedrill, which did so much good to rescue this primordial bug from the shadows, was nothing more than a mirage. After that brief moment of bliss, Weedle had to be awakened from its dream. We all cheered when they cleverly took advantage of the Mega Evolution to make Pokemon that really needed its shine, such as Beedrill, Lopunny, and Pidgeot, but with its disappearance and subsequent replacement by other mechanics, that dream was over for all of them. Sure, those Pokemon that received the Mega form first at least had a relatively longer period of time to spend dreaming, from X and Y to the end of Ultra Sun and Moon, throughout Let's Go, and now this return in Legend CA. And even with the pain of knowing that we're eventually going to disappear, they had a good span of time in which to leave their names written in history. But what will happen to the Megaforms of Legend ZA? Will they actually come up with amazing designs, reinterpreting the strengths of Pokemon that may need them, and filling the most forgotten corners of the Pokédex with life, only for a single game that I doubt will even be competitive, in fact, only for one city? The closest antecedent we have for such a thing is the Dynamax and Gigantamax. Those were also extremely limited in time, restricted to the 8th generation and its DLCs, to never be directly mentioned again, but I think it's a much less serious instance, since, first of all, this was a mechanic that was sold as exclusive to Galar, and that wasn't going to exist outside of there, unlike Mega Evolution that was presented at the beginning as something permanent, which angered many when it was not the case. The Gigantamax was not conceived as a way to improve Pokemon that might need it, or to make already powerful Pokemon even stronger. This giant Pokemon came only to enrich the staging of Galar and enhance the image of the region that gives the most emphasis to battles, unlike Megaforms, which from the start were meant to rescue species and further enhance the legend of those that were already powerful. That is, mechanically, the danger hidden in the possible new Megaforms of this game. They may be another brief mirage, and in favor of designing new Megaforms to capitalize on all the hype, they could even leave aside regional forms and new evolutions, concepts that actually give a real, lasting and natural revamp to Pokemon that need it. But what if I tell you that this threat hides a glimpse of light, the biggest opportunity in decades to transform the franchise forever and make Pokemon battles something that will win back the hearts of everyone? I am going to say it outright. I think that after Legend ZA, Mega Evolution should stay permanently in the series, and not just that. If a Pokemon receives a radical change in its capabilities in any color, size and shape, it should also stay. And I know that in the past I defended the opposite, that it was a good decision to remove Mega Evolutions from the field in favor of other mechanics that encapsulate the essence of each region. But now I understand that I wasn't seeing the big picture. Mega Evolution is connected to encounters, Z moves to the diversity of life, and Dynamax to heroism. I still love that they are willing to create new mechanics to enrich each region. But if one of them affects a Pokemon in such a significant way to give it its moment to shine and bring it out of oblivion, it shouldn't be discarded just like that. If something is done to correct past mistakes, what is the point of erasing it and repeating those mistakes? And a possible clue that this could be their intention is the Terrestrial phenomenon. In the 9th generation, we had for the first time ever a mechanic of transformation that doesn't involve specific changes for a particular Pokemon, but generic mutations that are applied to all alike. Many complained about this step, but perhaps they knew very well what were they doing. Perhaps they were looking from then on to create mechanics that could not be detrimental to remove. Maybe from now on, all new temporary mechanics will be designed in such a way that suppressing them doesn't negatively affect the Pokemon involved, while the new real redemptions of Pokemon that need them will be kept, and all the forms that were essential will be progressively brought back. But weren't the Megaforms a Kalos thing? How could they make Mega Evolution and other decisive new mechanics reappear in each new generation while respecting the established rules? Well, since the Delta episode, it was confirmed that a multiverse exists, and we are directly told that the Hoenn of the Game Boy Advance universe, whose existence is recognized in the same Delta episode, was totally unaware of this phenomenon. If we understand that there is a canon Hoenn without Megaforms, we can assume that there can also be a region of the Pokemon world where the phenomenon exists, even if the conditions of the ultimate weapon or Rayquaza's meteorite didn't happen as such. Terapagos and the Paradox Pokemon further reaffirm that same idea of basically anything being possible out there. Now, here's how I could handle this whole thing if it were up to me. There's a chance that no new Megaforms will be added and only the ones we already know will return, or that they will only be given to one or a few very specific Pokemon to suit the plot of this game, but everyone will agree that this could be very disappointing. And it's as fans expect a considerable list of new Pokemon receive Megaforms, this time they should be back to stay, and they should use the story of this new game to explain why this is going to be the case. Maybe that's why they went for this unexpected title in the first place. Everyone was expecting Unova remakes or Legends Johto, but this Legends based on Kalos might be the most mechanically necessary title for the series to rectify the mistake of removing Megaforms and reinterpret its story so that they can be present again from now on, while adding mechanics specific to the region that are not so invasive and can be compatible with it in successive generations. But what happens then if a Pokemon needs an upgrade or a revamp? For that, my friends, is that we have the classic new evolutions in different generations, which have been with us since the second generation, as well as one of the best mechanics that Game Freak has ever included, the regional forms. Both are much more benign, natural, and easily applicable to the lore of each culture and region, without any conflict for them to return in each game, and without snatching cruelly that redemption from the chosen Pokemon. And why not? They could also include new Mega Forms from time to time in all generations, if it really becomes a permanent feature of the games. New mechanics, limited to a single game, should then be like terrestrialization or Z-moves, punctual features that give a fresh look to gameplay and the competitive scene, but don't radically alter the biology of specific species. If special forms similar to Mega Evolution are eventually added, it should be handled carefully, and considering that this should be maintained in future releases, for the sake of coherence and uniformity in the Pokédex. I know it may all sound very far-fetched, but the other huge thing that makes me think there's a chance that it could be the case is the other bombshell from Pokemon Presents that I'm very surprised isn't giving so much to talk about. I'm talking, of course, about Pokemon Champions, a battle simulator that initially rang all my alarm bells. I really thought they were going to make an official Pokemon Showdown, although then I cooled down a bit, understanding that it's probably closer to a natural evolution of Stadium and Battle Revolution. The fact is that in this new game, it has been confirmed that Megaforms and Terra Pokemon will coexist, which could give us a hint that Mega Evolution could become a permanent feature, at least in the competitive side and possible sequels of this title, and that the stunning designs that are sure to arrive with this edition of Legends, they never fail at that, will be with us for a long term, and not just for this version of Lumiose City, as I'm quite afraid to think. Can you imagine a future in which the system of this new Pokemon Champions is the one that prevails in the core games and the competitive play, and in each battle we can choose a mechanic of all that exists and get to see epic battles of Gigantamax against Megaforms and Z-moves as in the final tournament of Ash's anime? What if the rules of that tournament were a small hint of what was to come in the future of competitive play? Well, that's really going over the top. However, is anyone going to deny me that such a competitive play, with all the mechanics coexisting and each player choosing one of them that best suits their style, would be far more epic than what we've had so far? If Pokemon really wants to make a big bet on making its competitive scene more appealing to the general public, on par with other video games, that could be an interesting path. But what do you think? Has Legends ZA arrived to save the Mega Evolution from oblivion, or to further embarrass Flygon, give it a Mega form that can't escape the city? We will see. For now, if you're still hungry for more, you can take a look at my video analyzing Legends ZA in depth, or if you like Genshin Impact, go check out my new channel focused on the wonderful stories of that franchise. Be nice.